okay? But let's face it, few of us, let alone a whole society, can act reasonable. Just think what you probably did yesterday or last week, and I think you'll see few of us ever act wholly rational. We are thus left with two choices: reason and religion together, or religion alone as possible sources of democratic restraint. In other words, religion can have a wonderfully positive influence on politics and help to secure the ground for natural rights, which might provide the bulwark against democratic tyranny. And here our Puritan heritage is very illustrative. And let me now turn a little bit to Alexis de Tocqueville's book, Democracy in America, oversimplifying briefly the high points of his analysis on why religion is so absolutely essential for democracy. Now, according to Tocqueville, you have in America at the beginning one of the most truly amazing combinations he had ever seen. He said, in America, we had combined the spirit of freedom with the spirit of religion, both of them supporting one another completely. The Puritan religion, he said, adores politics and the political sphere, because according to the Puritan religion, it is in the political sphere that people can act freely. And by acting freely, the Puritan religion saw that this allowed individuals the opportunity to exercise their will, and therefore to demonstrate if they were virtuous or vicious. In other words, political freedom does not at all harm religion. Republicanism in America did not turn against religion and attack it. Politics was the forum whereby you showed whether you had genuine Christian virtue. And politics as well adores and loves religion. Politics sees in religion the divine source of all of its rights. Now, of course, as Tocqueville points out, puritanical laws were not, shall we say, the nicest of laws, okay? They had an extremely harsh character, and in so many puritanical laws, the punishment for violating them was death, okay? So they weren't the nicest of laws, and they penetrated spheres, Tocqueville said, that should have been left alone. However, what politics loved about religion is it kept everyone upright morally. And there is nothing better than this to make sure our politicians conduct themselves well in political office. Our politicians have a difficult enough time being even decent in office. Imagine if they had no religious scruples. Okay? So religion and democracy for Tocqueville are not at all incompatible. They completely support one another. Democracy needs good mores, good citizens, and this is what religion supplies. And religion, which is left to its own sphere and not dishonored, looks upon politics as a noble exercise of the mind and will. So Tocqueville's conclusion is that it is religion that leads to democratic enlightenment and the observance of laws, and this in turn leads to genuine democratic freedom. It is the complete opposite of what is so much called fashionable opinion today. A religious society, Tocqueville says, is an enlightened society. The Puritans have a religious need or impulse to take care of members of their community, and in so doing, they help to lead to public enlightenment. In fact, Tocqueville goes so far as to suggest that democracy probably would have not have taken hold in America without our Puritan or religious heritage, or at least it would have been much more difficult. But there are at least three other reasons why religion provides a net positive benefit to political society, arguments that are both practical and theoretical. Because what religion in general does is provide contrary urges and desires to what we would naturally do if left on our own. First of all, religion forces us to think about other people than ourselves. Religion forces us to be concerned with more than our limited circle of family and friends. It forces us to associate with others, something that democracies does not encourage because of the way democracy atomizes. Democracy tends to make people feel small because it is the state or society that alone is great and strong. Religion forces us out into the open and thus to associate freely with others, and it's precisely this freedom that is the training ground for democracy and the source of Tocqueville's account of the New England Foundation. Now, just as an aside here, it is precisely this atomization that tyrants use to solidify their control. In all tyrannies, the number one object of a tyrant and a despot is to make sure you have no connections with others so that you cannot foment a rebellion. I mean, just ask yourself, why is there such fervor in the Middle East right now? How have they been able to overcome it? The cell phone has been able to make those associations where previously you couldn't. Second thing that religion does, it checks our unbridled urge for material pleasure and comfort, and to think of the future, not simply the present. Now, religion may not be able to cure this desire for material well-being on our part, but at least it can see that when we acquire material goods, we do so honestly. Religion forces us to see that there is more to life than simply acquiring material wealth as possible, or at least to acquire it honestly. We're allowed to see, at least maybe every Sunday, that there is something more in life than satisfying our appetitive desires. Thus, religion is not only a bulwark against tyranny because it forces us to associate with others, it also might prevent us, or at least delay us, from becoming nothing more than comfortable cattle, by forcing us to see that there is more to life than the satisfaction of earthly material pleasures. Religion can possibly ennoble us, or at least make us see that ennoblement is possible. By raising our minds to the heavens, or at least above the earth, and by inculcating duty to one's fellows, religion imposes obligations and responsibilities that are contrary to the natural desires Democrats would likely indulge if left to themselves. And finally, number three, as I've spoken about before, religion has that utterly essential capacity for imposing restraint or sacred restraint. Religion restrains us from doing whatever we might want. In a democracy, the people may be supreme and might be able to do whatever they want, but religion at least prevents people from saying and acting upon this. Religion prevents us from daring to attempt to do certain tyrannical things, things which would be contrary to Christian mores and ethics. We have a certain core set of assumptions that we do not and dare not question. Thus, those who attack democracy and religion as harmful to one another I'm not sure they understand the fire that you're playing with. As all traditional sources of authority melt away in democracy, what is it that's going to provide the restraint so that people act decently? Democracy means the people are sovereign, and that means there's nothing stopping the satiation of their most vulgar, vile, and tyrannical desires. One could multiply, I think, the benefits of religion endlessly, but in this decisive restraint, religion, through its support of rights and limits, can do what reason on its own cannot, and what we so desperately need. At all events, those people who think that rights can be grounded solely in reason, or even that democracy does not need such restraints, I have no theoretical argument that can disprove it. But the 20th century stands as an ominous warning for what happens when religion is thrust aside and politics or the people or the leader become their own secular religion.
Very good, Brian.
Bon chance.
Well, welcome. First, let me say I'm going to be playing devil's advocate today. But yes. But in all seriousness, I'm actually still very open on this question myself. So I'm literally sort of arguing a little bit stronger on the other side than the other otherwise would. But I do think there are very valid points made in response to all of Brian's points, and I'm going to be making some others as well. And so I first want to lay out several conditions and qualifiers, some of which Brian pointed out. He came up with a very specific definition of religion, and it's true if you study the sociology of religion or the psychology of religion, there is no agreed upon definition of religion. It's very contentious because it's such a broad rubric of human behavior. And so I'm going to be defining it based on what there's sort of a consensus, or I should say a slowly emerging consensus amongst sociologists and psychologists to differentiate between spirituality and religion. Now let me explain this here. And by the way, this is a spectrum. It's not either or. It's not, well, you're either spiritual or you're religious. It's a spectrum from anywhere from what I'll call sort of a pure spirituality all the way over to die-hard religious fundamentalism. And you can fit anywhere on this spectrum. And the key difference here, as I'm going to be arguing, is reason versus unreason. And I agree with a lot of points Brian made, and I'm going to bring those up as well. So look at this difference here. If you are a spiritual person, you have subjective beliefs that you think are true for yourself. Religion, especially fundamentalist religion, tends to believe in objective truths with a capital T. These are not open to question. They are absolutely true. Spirituality tends to be personal to yourself. You don't feel the need to impose it on others. Whereas religion, especially religious fundamentalism, feels the need to impose those beliefs on others. It no longer becomes personal, but public or political. Spirituality tends to believe in certain values or principles, like be kind, be good. Whereas religious fundamentalism tends to say behavior X is wrong and behavior Y is required. So it focuses on rules rather than principles or values. And ultimately, the most important point I want to make is that spirituality would say if you're forced into a conflict between reason and what you think your religious or spiritual beliefs say, reason trumps. You go by what the evidence and arguments are. You are open-minded to using reason. You're not going to have this blind, unthinking, unquestioning beliefs. Whereas that's not the case in religious fundamentalism. You do not question. You absolutely believe, no matter what the evidence, no matter what the arguments, even if they all go against you, that it's considered a virtue to stick to your guns and your belief regardless of the evidence and arguments against you.